Evolutionary.org podcast coming your way. This is episode 342, guys. Another compound episode. Our SARMS series continues. Stevesmi here, and Rick. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Steve? What's up, guys? How's everybody doing out there?
All right, guys. Yes. So this episode, we're going to be doing LGD. And LGD was one of the first SARMs that I ever used. It's one of the original SARMs that when SARMS first came out, you could basically order it off a SARMS website. And I used it myself when it first came out. It's a solid SARM. Selective androgen receptor modulator, guys. It's an actual SARM. Ligand Pharmaceuticals was the one who discovered it. And the way these SARMs work and the way LGD-4033 works is it binds to the androgen receptor of muscle and bone, but it does it selectively. So you're not going to get the types of side effects that are associated with anabolic steroids. So that's the nice thing about using LGD versus steroids. I would say it's very similar to RAD, maybe a little less potent than RAD, and then some of the more potent SARMs that you're seeing coming out, like S23 and stuff. Those are way more potent. And so LGD is kind of a good, solid SARM. I'll put it that way. And we're going to talk about it in this episode and tell you everything that you need to know about LGD, which is Anabolicum. That's the actual trade name for it. So I'm going to bring in Rick. Tell us a little bit about what you know about LGD's history and all the good stuff you know.
Well, yeah, LGD was discovered by Ligandrol Pharmaceuticals and is currently under development by Viking Therapeutics. Now, Viking has some drugs in development. They haven't brought one to market just yet. They're hoping they can bring LGD to market. The last time that they filed a form to have the drug approved was in November 2016. You know, it seems that if Viking doesn't bring a drug to market pretty quickly, their stockholders are probably going to start selling that share. Really, it's a company that doesn't quite develop drugs. It licenses technology from other companies like Ligandrol Pharmaceuticals and tries to bring them to market, which is a pretty interesting kind of niche to have a pharmaceutical company that does no real research of its own, just tries to market, I guess, and get approved and get used other companies' discoveries. It has been in clinical trials. It's made it all the way to phase 2 trials, most recently in 2016. It has been in the market probably a good decade, maybe just over. It is one of the real SARMs, one of the SARMs that actually does attach to androgen receptors selectively, unlike maybe a GW that doesn't really do that. LGD actually does attach to androgen receptors. In my opinion, from everything I've seen, it's stronger than S4 as far as muscle building effects and on the androgen receptor, and definitely stronger than Ostrain. Ostrain probably being the weaker of the three, S4 being the middle child, and LGD in that mix being probably the stronger one out of those three. Again, a legitimate SARM. And not much history on it. Some guys have gotten popped for using it. 2015, the quarterback of the Florida Gators, Will Greer. 2017, Joakim Noah was banned for 20 games from the NBA. 2019, Australian swimmer Shayana Jack tested positive for LGD. August 2019, Canadian sprint canoeist Lawrence Vincent Lapointe tested positive. It's been found in racehorses as well. That is just some history on it. What do you have, Steve?
Yeah, well, Joakim Noah, I remember that. That was he actually got 20 game ban in the NBA for that. It was a big deal at the time. He's a very good role player in the NBA. And then Will Greer, he's now the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. He did make it to the NFL, 3rd round pick, although his rookie year he wasn't really good. So yeah, the interesting thing about LGD, Rick, it is one of the 3 SARMs currently in clinical testing. So as you mentioned, there's a chance it could get approved at some point. And, that would be pretty kind of interesting. Ostarine is the other one, and then BMS is the third, but BMS isn't something that we use. So, let's go over some of the benefits. Let's explain a little bit. So one of the things on LGD does really well is it's going to give you some nice lean muscle mass. It's going to strengthen bones. It's going to strengthen muscle. And like Ostarine, there is some evidence that it helps with healing. Although when it first came out, it was considered way more anabolic than Ostarine. I would say now it's, definitely not the most powerful SARM out there. But at the time when SARMs first started being sold to athletes, it was. So a lot of athletes started taking 10, 20 milligrams a day, and they started getting those good benefits in those.
For context, which SARMs came out later on that kind of were stronger than LGD and knocked it off its throne? Because for a while when the first set of SARMs came out, which is GW, S4, Ostarine, and LGD were the first four original SARMs, right? LGD was the strongest muscle builder out of the four of them. What other SARMs, in your opinion, have knocked it off of that pedestal?
Yeah, RAD was the first, because RAD is, a step above it. And then S23, which I had the pleasure of using actually very early on. But the problem with S23 is very expensive. So we're talking 3-4 times as expensive as LGD. I had the pleasure of using it. Very, very powerful. And then you had YK11, which is also very, very powerful, that are now available. And you maybe like even 2 years ago, you couldn't get legitimate S23 or YK11. So we've come a long way. But I'm not saying that LGD doesn't have good benefits, because it does. Because, these S23, the side effects are very, very much more. And then YK11 is a little scary to me, because, we don't really know a lot about it. So, it's only really been around less than a year, like legitimate YK11. So LGD is definitely the cream of the crop if you want something that's been tried and true for years, Rick. I think LGD is still one you want to definitely respect. And the side effects are very, very low compared to some of these others. Like S4 gives you vision, S23, really, really strong on your reproductive system, very much more suppressive. So with LGD, you're not going to get much suppression on it. The blood work doesn't lie. You might knock a point or two off your LH and FSH. That's it. It's not going to shut you down like anabolic steroids will. It's not going to give you prostate problems. It's not going to give you estrogen issues. So side effects are almost non-existent on it, besides that minor suppression, a little bit of liver issue, and a little bit of throwing off your cholesterol. But other than that, it's as clean as you're going to get. So there was one study that was done that I want to cite. And this was done on a rodent. They were castrated. They were left untreated for 14 days to allow for muscle and prostate to atrophy. And then they were treated with LGD after 14 days, and they showed potent activity in the skeletal muscle, but very weak activity in the prostate, despite higher concentrations being found there. And then there was another study. This is what Lagan did. This was over a month. Showed that you had rats that had increased muscle mass, and that was related to an increase in muscle fiber cross-sectional diameter. So we've seen in these rodent studies the benefits, and then like everything else, athletes noticed it. Athletes decided, you know what, we're going to pick up on it, and we're going to start using it for our own benefits as well. So yeah, you're on mute now. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, LGD is one of the original ones, one of the first four original. It's the strongest one out of the four as far as muscle building goes, muscle building effects. Some guys do report some good bulking on it. It's not very clean, kind of dry bulking like an Anavar would, but it is, as far as all of the other SARMs go, it is your better muscle builder. Out of all of them, I think it's the better muscle builder, the one that gets the closest to steroids, and the one that has the least therapeutic effects out of all of them. If you really, make a chart as far as the health benefits of each one, everything from S4, how it eases your prostate, to Osterin on bones, to GW on your endurance. When you get down to LGD, it does a little bit of that, but it's just a good muscle builder. Doesn't have really those really big therapeutic effects as the other ones do. And yeah, it's just not when compared to something like Anabar, which is Anabar may be one of your weakest steroids, and LGD might be among one of your strongest SARMs. It just doesn't give you that polished look. It's a little bit of waterier gains, is what I've seen reported from guys, at least when compared to some of the other SARMs and some of the other compounds that are available or maybe interchangeable with it, like Anavar. There is a little bit of bloating. And what do you think, Steve?
No, I don't think there's any bloating, Rick. I think that a lot of that, some of those reports of side effects, you're right. Some people do say that, but I think it boils down to they're just running fake SARMs, because you're not going to have any estrogen issues on it. I've seen the blood work. Yeah.
We've discussed before how when you add SARMs to your body, there is more. It raises your free testosterone because it competes with your natural testosterone for receptors. So it does. Some SARMs do raise estrogen a little bit. We've discussed before, maybe not enough to give people gynecomastia, or at least that I've seen, at least people that take legitimate SARMs. But there is some water retention. It's probably, as far as estrogen side effects from SARMs go, the worst I've seen reported has been water retention.
So let's go over how we can stack it. So I would describe it definitely that's the cousin of Osterine for sure. I would also say that it has some endurance benefits, but nothing like Cardarine, which is a PPAR agonist. So there are some similarities to the other SARM-like products that are being sold out there. A little weaker than S4 when it comes to strength, but overall it's a very solid SARM. So a typical cycle of, if you wanted to cut down, what you could do is use LGD 10 milligrams a day with Cardarine 20 milligrams a day. And you want to use, your N2 guard for your liver. If you wanted the bulk, you could stack 10 milligrams of LGD, maybe 20 milligrams of LGD. You could stack it with RAD or S23 or S4 or any of those. That would be a good stack. And if you wanted a boost in endurance, you could stack the LGD 10 milligrams a day with Cardarine or SR9009, which we haven't discussed yet. We haven't had a podcast about, but we will at some point. So there's different ways to use it for sure. Usually guys will run it 8 to 12 weeks. Very, very mild. So if you run it less than that, you may not be pleased with your results. So, that sums up. What do you think about using it, Rick? What dosage would you recommend?
I'm always one for using as little bit as you can get away with for what you need. So yeah, 10, just basically run the experiment, 10, 15, 20, and see where you feel and where it takes you. I just say always start with the lowest, especially if you are a guy just starting off. Start off with 10. If you are a more advanced user, maybe using it as a bridge somehow, which is probably not the best. But if you're just using it and you already are a steroid user, TRT guy, you do oral cycles, 20 mgs, it's probably what you're going to need to really see something and feel something from it. So 10 to 20 mgs is about where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that simple. And like I said, 8 to 12 weeks is really all you need on it to get some good results. So, let's talk a little bit about its half-life. Now, the half-life on it, we're not really sure about, but we think it's somewhere between 24 and 36 hours. So if you just run it once a day, that's all you need to do. Just dose it once a day. LGD, just like the other SARMs, there's capsules out there. There's also liquids out there. Which one is better? These days, it really doesn't matter as long as it's legit. So you want to make sure you use a legitimate source. Very, very important. A lot of fakes out there. These companies know that you have no way to test these things. So they'll send you fake, they'll selective scam you and all this stuff. So you must buy these SARMs from a legitimate source, or who knows what you're going to get.
Yeah, having a legitimate source is the number one thing. There's so many cowboys out there in the SARMS industries now. I mean, it's incredible. You everywhere you go, they're advertising, and there is no regulation. Look, when it comes to my supplements, every time I make one of my supplements, N2Guard, which a lot of guys take with LGD, funny enough, because LGD is,
You know, that I've seen, I'm, you know what, I've seen blood work of SARMs, and they do seem, several of them do seem to kind of mess with your liver.
so when I make N2Guard, which a lot of guys take with LGD, when I make N2 Generate, which a lot of guys use for post-psychotherapy, and also during their SARM cycle to give them a little boost in testosterone production, and also to minimize suppression. When I make these, I'm required by law to test them for bacteria, to test them, to have a certificate of analysis for each batch, and file that in a folder with my paperwork for that batch. When these guys make these SARMs, they're not required to do any of those things. Because they're not even making their stuff in certified facilities. And so any certified facility goes through this whole process. So it's really about trusting the brand, trusting the source, making sure that you know who you're shopping from, because there's really no regulation. I can get a visit from enforcement, and I just have to have my paperwork in order from all my batches, all the proofs that we did the proper testing. It's just how it goes. These guys, when they get a visit from enforcement, they're being shut down. The paperwork doesn't matter at that point. It doesn't matter what they filed or what they saved. So really, you've got to just trust your source, trust that they're doing the right thing, and that they have your best interest and your health in mind. Aside from that, there isn't much else you can do aside from maybe, spending a few $100 testing the bottles when you get them, and that is just not feasible. It's just not economic. So really, it really comes down to just trusting the place you're getting it from. There aren't even any home kits for SARMs yet. Like steroids, there are home kits that you can get to test your steroids at home. SARMs not yet. So it's just something to know.
Tell us about the legality of selling SARMs. These companies that are selling SARMs with how are they able to sell them using a credit card processor? And is it legal to buy SARMs, or is it just you have to just buy them for research reasons only? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, if you're buying, they're not scheduled, so you can possess them, buy them, even as long as they're not ticketed, they're not labeled and presented as for human consumption. You're pretty well in the clear to mess with them, because they're not scheduled, they're not controlled. Possession of them is not wrong. You can have them in your car, you can travel with them. The only issue where you get into some legalities is with people taking it and stuff like that. But besides that, it's really not a controlled item. It's not scheduled item. So when you make supplements, like my supplements, they all have to be naturally occurring. In order for me to call it a supplement, put supplement facts on it, put dietary supplement on it, and the FDA warning, all of the ingredients have to be naturally occurring. Any ingredients that are synthetic, or any ingredients that are developed that are not naturally occurring in nature, you need to go through a whole process with the FDA in order for them to be approved. These SARMs are not naturally occurring. They're developed in a lab. And so they really can't be put in a supplement. It's a dietary supplement. They can't. So that is the real. When it comes to these SARMs now, is you can't really label them as supplements. But on their own, they're not scheduled. They're not troublesome. They're not criminal on their own, just possessing them, having them. The way Anavar would be. If you have a pill of Anavar, that's charges. If you have a pill of SARMs, any of the ones out there, it's nothing. So that's it.
If LGD gets approved, do you foresee it being off the market for athletes?
No, guys are still, well, if it gets approved, then it'll be just like Novadex, just
But
like
you'll have to get a
Clomid.
prescription for it.
Yeah, I mean, legally, you is what you're supposed to do. But then again,
So you'd
Clomid
be
and
breaking the law. If you were to access it, you would have to go to the black market then, because it was FDA approved. You need a prescription, right?
yeah. But again, it wouldn't change. It wouldn't come off of the list for these SARM sources. A lot of them are already selling prescription items like Novadex, like Cialis, like Clomid. So then LGD would just become a prescription item like tamoxifen, like
So it'd be
clomifene.
like a research chemical.
And it already is. It's already what it's. Even if it
They'd
becomes
have
a,
to sell it as a research chemical, is what I'm saying. They'll have to sell it as a research chemical.
and
How are they able to sell these right now with credit card processors?
they're all research chemicals, or they're all novelty items. They're not put in as dietary supplements. And how are they selling it with a credit card? They find very creative ways to fool credit card processors, because the banks are now on the lookout, and they have underwriters and teams that know what to look for, because it's not just our industry doing funny things with research chemicals. This research loophole is being exploited by every industry. There's a lot of head shops that sell weird stuff for people to hallucinate. There are a lot of different weird niches and hobbies people have out there, some dark web stuff. And so underwriters and banks they don't want to be the enabler. They don't want to be in the middle of these transactions. Even if the buyer and the seller both are in agreement about this transaction, even if somebody wants to sell the SARMs and somebody wants to really buy the SARMs, somebody wants to really sell them, banks and credit card processors don't want to be in the middle of that. And so they're really good at hunting these guys down. So these guys find really good creative ways of getting away with it. They find good creative ways of actually of fooling credit card processors, at least for a while. This is why you see a lot of SARMs places that sometimes lose their credit cards, or they'll have funny ways for you to pay them, or they'll only take Bitcoin, or they'll only take alternate payment forms of payment, because credit card processors are proactively on the hunt for these things.
All right, so before we close up the show, we talked about how to stack LGD with SARMs. I gave you some ideas. Really, at the end of the day, it's a very versatile SARM. You can stack it with any SARM. So I just want to be clear that you can stack it with S23, you can stack it with YK, stack it with RAD, you can stack it with Osterine, GW, SR, everything. It's a really good one to use. It's actually a pretty good SARM to use as a base in any SARM stack. So let's talk about steroid stacks. Is LGD worth it to stack in a steroid stack? It can give you the benefits, guys. It does have some soft tissue benefits, some joint benefits. It gives you some benefits in terms of lean muscle mass. So you could stack it with steroids. Now, if you're running a very high dosage androgenic cycle, lots of tests, lots of tren, lots of anadrol, lots of debol, stuff like that, you really probably are going to just waste your money stacking LGD with it, unless you want maybe some joint benefits. But in that case, I would tell you to go to Osterine. And if you wanted endurance benefits and fat loss benefits, I'd tell you to go to Cardarine or SR. So with LGD, I think LGD stacks really good, Rick, with something like Primo, Masteron, something like that, Anavar, T-Bol, because you can stack it and you're not going to be adding to side effects in that stack, but it's going to give you a nice little boost and lean muscle mass and some other benefits as well. So absolutely, yes, you can stack it with steroids in an 8 to 12 week cycle. Not a bad idea. And it'll give you some nice benefits, and it's got really no downside to doing that. What do you think?
If I was to stack a SARM with steroids, it might be Osterine, S4, GW for some of those additional benefits that the steroids don't give you. When it comes to LGD, taking it with steroids, you're just taking the LGD, which is a weaker than the weakest steroid, and doesn't have all of the good benefits of the other SARMs. It's really that SARM that you could and should maybe run on its own, run it by itself, run it with maybe a testosterone booster like AC Generate ES, run it maybe with arimistane, laxogenin mix, maybe one of the DHEAs if you're going all over the counter. If you're going all over the counter, then LGD, laxogenin, arimistane, That's a good stack. You'll be growing good muscle there. But if you're gonna already shop from a source, if you're already going to receive packs and traffic in the black market, right? Um, then just get your whole cycle and just do a steroid cycle. And if you definitely want to use LGD, I'd say use it kind of standalone. Use it standalone in between cycles with a good testosterone booster or with a good dose of laxogenin, about 400 mgs, 500 mgs of laxo a day, along with the LGD and maybe a remistane, 50, 75 milligrams a day of a remistane together. You got an over-the-counter cycle. You didn't have to shop from a source. You didn't have to go black market. You use your credit card. You got a good muscle building over-the-counter cycle with an anti-estrogen and the remistane. You're good to go. If you're going to go black market, receive packs, traffic in it, wait for the guy at the parking lot at the gym and get your bottles. If you're doing all of that, LGD might not have a place. Just do the steroids. LGD is weaker than Anavar as far as changing your physique and changing the way you look. It's weaker than Winstrol in that regard. So why even toss it in? I'd say it's good standalone with some other or maybe with other over-the-counter stuff. I wouldn't mix it with black market. Black market, just go black market. And Ostrin has a place. As for GW, even they'll have a place in a steroid cycle because of the additional therapeutic benefits. LGD falls short to beat those out of that, and it falls short as an anabolic too. So, what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with any of that. At the end of the day, if it's the first time using it, I would say it works as a standalone beautifully. Now, female use, we haven't talked about female use. We've been talking just the male use. I think it's one of the best SARMs to use as a female. 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams. I had an ex who went on it, and she, she was, getting into weight training and stuff, and she really liked it. It didn't give her any problems, and she actually increased her bench, Rick. She went from being able to bench the bar to being able to bench. I think she was able to get up to like 65 pounds on the bench press. I think that's pretty good, right? She was actually she weighed about like 103 or 104, so she was able to bench almost her body weight. I think that's pretty damn good. So I mean, she got nice benefits from it. So female 5 to 10 milligrams a day, staying alone 8 to 12 weeks, will get fantastic results. If you wanted to throw in some GW, 10 to 20 milligrams of GW, get fantastic results. So great SARM for a female for sure. The best SARM for a female, in my opinion.
Yeah, for muscle building, it's around the best ones, and for a female, absolutely. I mean, it's weaker than Winstrol and Anavar, also on the side effect end. So yeah, I mean, and I'll say this like I say on every show when it comes, or every time we mention SARMs. SARMs haven't been around that long. Anavar's been around since the 1960s, while SARMs have been around the last decade and a half. We don't really know long-term what they're really going to do or what the real long-term effects are going to be on our body. Anavar has been around for 60 years. You can just imagine how many generations of women have taken and used Anavar going up to competitions. LGD, good decade and a half. So we don't know. We don't really know down the line later on what the effects are going to be. Anavar was at one point approved. It went through all the trials, and at one point was approved as a real medication, something doctors can prescribe. LGD hasn't yet. Still going through those approvals. And so it's just something to always keep in mind when it comes to SARMs. They all sound great, and we have people reporting great things about them. So I'm not going to be out doubting them because the anecdotes from users are undeniable. But something to keep in mind is that sometimes it takes decades to figure out what some of these drugs will do, what effect they'll have on a good section of the population. And you need to be aware of that whenever you put these things into your body. You need to know that. Something to throw in there.
You sound like a hater, Rick.
I'm hating on them. Yeah, but it's real. When you use Anavar, when you put Anavar into your body, we're pretty good on knowing what it's going to do. It's been around since the 60s. Same thing with Dianabol, same thing with pretty much everything. But when it comes to SARMs, they're new. They're new, and it's the responsible thing to let people know that we don't really yet know. But look, guys, I still use SARMs here and there. It's not my go-to, but I'm going to use some more SARMs in the next few months for sure. It's not my go-to, but it's something to know.
All right, guys, listen, we covered everything in this podcast and more. So we'll have a next compound episode. Remember, our even episodes are going to be compounds, and our odds are going to be Q&As. For Stevesmi and Rick, has been another great episode of Evolutionary Radio. I will talk to you guys next week. Keep in touch.
Have a good one, Steve. Have a good one, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.